Well, it's asked the builders. They say it's just too expensive, given the high cost of land, labor, and materials, to build the kind of entry-level homes that this market really needs. And this was a little bit bigger than just a little miss. I mean, we need to see much more construction in the single-family side. A lot of the gains that we saw here were multifamily. When you break it down to single-family, we are barely up compared to a year ago. Last month, we were down compared to a year ago in single-family, essentially flat this month. And builders are not building on that entry-level side. Slightly better news on the permits, but again, the permit gains were multifamily as well. So when you break it down, what the builders are seeing is more profit in the multifamily. In the single family, they're doing the move-up homes and the luxury. And on the lower side, it's just not there. We saw new home sales drop pretty dramatically last month, and that was due to affordability. You're seeing it on the existing home sale side and the new home sale side. There's just a price limit, and people are hitting that limit now. We're actually in the existing home market starting to see price cuts, and that's according to a new report from Zillow.
Diana, of the three things that you mentioned, the higher labor cost, the higher land cost, and the higher materials cost, is there one that kind of stands out? I mean, I think to labor, and we lost so many construction workers 10 years ago because they stopped building houses. Those people went on and got retrained, found other jobs in other industries. That would seem like a pretty tough one to try and build back up. But is it more of the materials because of the tariffs right now, more because of land prices?
It's really both. It's both. I mean, we've had that labor story has been in play for the last couple of years. Yes, there continues to be a labor shortage, although we are seeing more workers come into the construction industry. It's growing slowly. The tariff issue is a problem. And in fact, in the home builder sentiment report, which came in yesterday and dropped by 1 point, the big issue for the builders, they said, was concern over higher costs for materials because of tariffs. They said they were watching them very closely. We know the cost of lumber has gone up significantly. And now we see, aluminum, other metals, prices rising on that. That's only going to make it more expensive for builders to build homes and, again, keep them away from that entry-level product that we need so much.
All right, Steve, give us the big picture. What does all of this mean?
Housing is one of a couple sectors in the economy. I think the economy is doing reasonably well. Housing's one that has me worried. I think that there are a couple things that are working. I think Diana mentioned many of them. Interest rates are higher. Housing is a leading sector when it comes to the direction of the economy because it's so interest rate sensitive. We're hearing mortgages down in the low 4s to the mid 4s, depending upon, people kind of got used to hearing those 3 numbers. And I was like, oh, 3, let's buy a house.
I can't.
I'm not sure that was the smartest move back then.
Right.
And just to give some magnitude to what Diana's talking about, back in 2002, we built houses at a 1.6 million unit annual rate. And there were 40 million fewer people. We struggle now to get to 1.2 million.
But I would say the 1.6 was overbuilding at that point.
Well, no, that's right. You used 02. I didn't use 07 when it was crazy, like 2 million units.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is out there, so you have the interest rate issue. Diana mentioned the tariff issue. There are supply issues, labor issues. Another issue that I'm watching, and I'm kind of like on guarded watch on this one, is the effect of the tax change in December. Okay, because you have that issue. You have people talking about what's happened to housing prices in the Northeast. We did have a big negative on Northeast housing starts. I don't know if that's playing a factor. It's not the biggest thing. You want to watch the South more importantly for what's happening with housing starts, but it's something worth watching as to whether or not that end of the state and local tax deduction. And I'm just going to say the end of the SALT deduction has some impact on local real estate prices.
Yeah, and Steve, I just got back from Miami yesterday where I was talking to real estate agents there, and they're seeing a big influx of people from the Northeast, not just your regular snowbirds, but people wanting to move to Florida where taxes are lower. And they were talking a lot about that SALT issue in the Northeast. Also in the luxury market in New York, for example, you're seeing prices come back because of that. I mean, that's what the realtors are, at least the buzz. We don't have specific data on it yet. That's what they're all talking about.
There's a lot of talk about what's happened, especially sort of in the meat and potatoes part of the market, which folks just don't. Potatoes market? Well, Diana will correct me on this, and people in other parts who don't live on the coast will gag on their coffee when I say the meat and potatoes part of the market is like 800,000 to 1.2 million in the Northeast. Those are sort of normal. Am I wrong about that, Diana? When I talk about the normal kind of.
Okay, maybe if you're talking in Manhattan or New York City, the median home price in America is less than $300,000. If you're talking about the New York City suburban area, which is an island unto itself, maybe you're talking the 6 to a million range, but most of the country is not the coast, and that's where most of the volume comes from. I have half a garage to sell you for
$300,000 in the New York area, Diane, maybe, and I'm not even going to clean it out before I sell it to you.
No, I mean, look, the meat and potatoes area for New York, it's under pressure, obviously, because of taxes. But when we look at these overall numbers in the vast majority of the market and where the builders are, home builders are not so much in the New York City area, at least not in the single family area.
I think what needs to happen, there's a lot of issues that Diana mentioned, and those don't necessarily concern the Federal Reserve, but there was talk in the last hour about the Fed getting up to a rate and then saying it neutral. And I think stability in the mortgage market is something that could help sales eventually. I don't know, Diana, if people are coming into the market, at least some of them, and saying, now's the time to do it because at least rates are going to get worse from here.
Well, people do think rates will get worse slowly, but we're not seeing it in the mortgage application volume. It continues to drop both on the purchase side and on the refi side, which was interesting. Even just last week, we saw rates pull back a little bit after they had jumped ahead for the previous weeks. We did not see any refinance volume come back in. So many people are in that 3% range that now that we're heading toward the 5% range, there's just no volume.